The mission of U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action is to bring all of American agriculture together with farmers and ranchers at the center to collectively identify and tackle critical long term issues. The Innovation Forum will be hosting the Future of Food and Beverage USA, a 2 day business conference on May 28th through the 29th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It will bring together leading brands, farmers, and key stakeholders to identify the main areas of opportunity and innovation within the food and beverage industries. This episode will provide a high level overview of what's on the table in the food and beverage space and what the next generation of farmers and ranchers need to be in the know on. We are joined with Ian Welsh. He's a publishing director and podcast host for the Innovation Forum and also the conference chair for the Future of the Food and Beverage USA conference. Each question that I'll be asking are a few of the many sessions that the future let me rephrase that. Each of the questions I'll be asking are a few of the many sessions at the Future of Food and Business USA conference, and Ian will provide the context of why this idea will be covered and what the focus will be on. Before we jump into some of these session titles, Ian, can you provide a high level overview of the conference and the unique opportunities it offers?
Sure. Thank you, Joanna. Yes. Well, one of our major themes is, in fact, as you mentioned, the next generation of farming, which includes addressing the next generation of farmers themselves, farming techniques, technologies, and how big food companies and other stakeholders can support this, including, of course, regenerative farming, something which we hear a lot about, resilience, and long-term value creation for all. Our conference is off the record. It's held under the Chatham House rule of non-attribution. So it's a chance to have the off-the-record conversations that enable insights to be shared without the concern of your, being splashed all over the farming press or whatever. It's just it will not get out. Our conferences are very strict on the use of the Chatham House rule, and everyone respects it. Everyone respects it because they want themselves to be off the record and have the difficult conversations in that safe environment. So I think that's one of the things that I'm certainly very proud of about Innovation Forum. And also it's the chance to have pre-competitive conversations. You can talk about things that you can do together that aren't necessarily be competitive, that can actually help each other, help different businesses from different parts of value chains. At the event itself, we try not to have panel after panel. We try to mix it up. So there's interactive formats, including roundtables, some breakout sessions designed to help the audience engage directly with industry leaders for progressive dialogue and hands-on collaboration. That's what we're trying to achieve.
Right. And I want to emphasize you're having a lot of the key players at the table, brands, farmers, key stakeholders. That's really, really great to see. And it's not a 7 day conference. It's only a 2 day conference. So you guys are packing a lot into those 2 days. Let's start with one of the session headlines that I thought was pretty interesting. How can we ensure efforts at the local, state, and national level benefit farmers rather than just looking good on paper?
Yeah, I'm not sure a 7 day conference would work. I think people might get a little bit tired by the end of it. Anyway, yes, this is a very crucial topic and one that really can't be addressed without effective collective action. At the event, the conference in Minneapolis, we will have a brainstorming session on the main stage so that we can flip the script and invite our audience there, including farmers, as you say, policy experts and representatives from across value chains to share their insights and proposed solutions. The session will be led by a small panel with the U.S. Department of Agriculture State Director from Minnesota and the Director of Global Government Affairs at Kraft Heinz. So one that's not to be missed.
Before we go on to the next session, I'm curious, when you have these people, you named some policymakers, what has been their impression of the food and beverage conference in the past?
Well, I think they enjoy the opportunity to talk off the record. I mean, it's if you are in policy, then of course it's very public. You're always being scrutinized, and it's very difficult to have those conversations because you've always got to stick very much on to the script and on what it is that the policy is. But when you're developing policy, often it can be very useful to have the conversations with people that are impacted by the policies, and that is something I think that we try very hard to enable. We know that we wouldn't get policy people if it was an on-the-record conference. They just don't come. So that's holding it off the record under Chatham House rule is something that really enables policy people to be able to come. it means they can come and be candid and open and really get the sort of feedback that's useful for them from those that are affected by their policy.
Right. And it's just a really good learning opportunity for them to come in and maybe ask some of those vulnerable questions that they wouldn't ask out in public. The next session title I'd like to talk about is From Renovation to Innovation: How Research and Development and Ag Tech Ventures Can Collaborate to Accelerate Food Sustainability.
Well, I think that transforming food systems isn't just about inventing new technology or conducting groundbreaking research. It's about bringing those elements together through strategic partnerships. And it's only through these partnerships really that can have the potential to move quickly from the lab to the field and ultimately to our stomachs and our plates. This session that we're at the event will explore how we can make this happen, how we can close the gap when there's $80 billion in global climate finance, but only 2.4% is directed towards agriculture and forestry. So how can we close that gap and collaborate? That's the key.
Now I want to know Ian's perspective. I see the point that sticks out: accelerate food sustainability. I feel like farmers and ranchers are already doing a pretty decent job in this space, and we are moving quickly. It's everyone else, whether that's the policy, the value chain, the other industries. From your take on either, a global stance, how do you see all of those working together, or is it alarming that we say accelerate food sustainability?
Well, I think the problem is that there isn't enough enabling done to allow farmers to do what they want to do. I completely agree. Farmers and ranchers, they're the ones that want to deal with these issues. They're the one that want to make their farms efficient. They want to make their farms lower impact. They don't need. They can see there's not the need for huge inputs that some of the way that some of the agriculture systems have developed. So I think the role of everyone else, as you put it, is to really help enable farmers to do what they want to do. And whether that's being attractive for younger farmers, we've mentioned that already, whether it's thinking about innovations in terms of technology that can enable efficiencies, it's all those sorts of things really that can help farmers help the rest of us, essentially.
Right, I agree with you. Next topic I'd like to talk about is our next session I'd like to talk about is all eyes on insetting. How do we make it happen? And Ian, if you could take a step back and share what is insetting and what are some of those pressing topics that will be covered?
Well, insetting is essentially offsetting, but done inside a value chain, your an operations and value chain. I think your listeners will be familiar with the concept of offsetting, whereby if you have a particular amount of emissions in your operations and supply chain, you can offset that by buying that amount of reduction of emissions being reduced somewhere else. That's an offset. It's outside of your operations and supply chain. Insetting is essentially where businesses and brands can work with their supply chain, work with their suppliers to reduce the emissions in the supply chain. So help work with farmers, for example, to provide some or to develop some lower emitting techniques and processes. So that's really insetting. And then the big companies can then use that reduction as part of their own net zero carbon reduction program.
One of the next session titles is Animal Ag is Under Fire. What are the real solutions, real cost, and real returns?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, animal agriculture does face criticism. I'll start that again. Animal agriculture does face criticism for its environmental impacts, but real solutions do exist. Regenerative grazing improves soil health and sequesters carbon. Feed initiatives, including, for example, alternative materials like seaweeds, for example, can really cut methane emissions. And there's technology around that can optimize resource use. There are inevitably, of course, costs, upfront investment in training, technology, but returns are worth it. Environmental benefits, premium pricing for sustainable products, and stronger brand value, and ensuring supply continuity in some respects as well. The challenge really is balancing sustainability with farm profitability. That's been the balance since forever, but requires farm collaboration again between farmers, businesses, brands, and policymakers to make the solutions scalable and affordable. I actually recently spoke with Sajeev Manhumkamur from investor advocacy group the FAIR Initiative about a new piece of research into interventions that can improve outcomes in livestock farming. So look out for that on the Innovation Forum podcast. Main finding is, interestingly, that nature-based interventions have better and longer-term impacts compared with technology-based interventions. They just aren't being encouraged enough.
Right. I think one big fighting thing in that topic too is time. All these things take time. They take the research, and over years is where we're seeing some of these trends. Have you seen time kind of be a challenge where we're trying to have these things put in place, but it's going to take time?
Yeah, I mean, inevitably, everything does take time. I mean, agriculture is based around time. I mean, it's a seasonal, the things come in seasons. There's a growing season, there's a non-growing season, and everything else. So these things do just take time. And I think there's a recognition of that, but also there's a recognition that the fact that things may take time is not a reason not to get started and get moving as fast as possible. Uh, you know, and there's a there's a well-worn cliche that we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It may be that we don't have perfect solutions for many of the challenges that we face, but we have to go with the best we've got right now. So that means getting cracking with better solutions, and whilst trying to develop the perfect solutions and give you time to do that. But if we can't sit still and wait, we don't have time. If we're thinking about how we're going to mitigate the impacts of climate change on a local level and at an international level. I mean, on a local level, I mean in terms of helping farmers who are impacted by flooding, by drought. What can we do to help those particular growers? But then also collectively ensure that the emissions globally are kept within the potential planetary boundaries.
Right. We shouldn't be dragging our feet getting started, but we can be patient when it comes to finding the right solution that fits everyone. Really good response. We've been talking with Ian Welsh. We're talking about the future of the food and beverage space. We're going to talk about another headline that you guys will be covering. The tech is right. In the past 5 years, which new technologies have made a real difference in the supply chain?
This is going to be a little bit of fun this session. We're going to have a game show inspired interactive session looking at real technologies transforming supply chains. Over 3 rounds, our audience will share real world examples of technology that's delivered across cost savings, efficiency gains, and carbon reductions, whilst also discussing the trade offs and challenges that they've faced. The final round will focus on the future, with the audience voting on emerging technology with what they perceive as having the most potential. It's a bit of fun, it's engaging format, but it's designed to spark the sort of peer-to-peer learning and actionable insights for building resilient, efficient supply chains. That's what we're trying to do. So it's really perfect for anyone I'll do that again. It's really perfect for anyone looking to cut through the noise and focus on what really works on the ground. And it's going to be a bit of fun. We try to change the pace at our conferences, as I said earlier, rather than it just being panel after panel, lots of different things happening. We do pack the 2 days, but there's lots of different things going to keep it engaging for everybody.
Yeah, it definitely sounds engaging. I am curious though, Ian, from your perspective, are there any technologies that stick out to you right now that you would want to speak about within the supply chain?
Think that the things to really look out for, and that really I find really interesting, are the kind of clever regenerative agriculture techniques. Things like, I mean, it's not particularly complicated or complex, or even that particularly new, but it's using them in a particularly new way, I think. Some of the techniques around very precise irrigation, for example. We've talked before, right, water stress. There's an awful lot of ways in which the of crops can be satisfactorily irrigated, but without the sort of spraying loads of water all over the crop. Things like that are really interesting. Things about using cover crops, the kind of development of no tillage agriculture. These are all really interesting ways to go about. But also, they're actually, in some respects, it's almost like going back to the future, because these are all things that have been done by farmers across generations. So it's really a question of relearning sometimes the techniques that farmers had used in the past when they didn't have access to the inputs that they have now. So that's a thing that I find particularly interesting and look out for.
Had 2 more sessions I'd like to talk about. This one is focused on young farmers. How can big agriculture empower the next generation of farmers to enhance resiliency?
Well, some studies suggest that the average age of US farmers is around 60 now. So this really is a very important conversation to be had. It's clear that it's essential to support young farmers with tools, with training, and financial resources that they need to thrive and access farming in the first place and make it a viable business. We will look at innovative models at the conference, mentorship programs, access to affordable technology, partnerships with big agribusiness that can really help young farmers adopt regenerative practices and navigate climate challenges. It's a practical, forward-looking conversation that we need to have about how to bridge the gap between big ag and the next generation.
We say young farmers, but we're talking about the next generation of agriculture. Who's going to carry this on? Who's going to continue to feed the world? Last session I'd like to cover is bankrolling nature's future. Who will foot the bill for sustainable agriculture at scale?
Well, the answer is going to be not farmers. It needs to be the entire value chain. It's going to be everybody. It's a historical wrong that it's always producers and farmers that are the ones that have to absorb the cost of change, and that's just not right. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't work. So it needs to be very important. It's a fairly distributed cost. I mean, there's some studies say $300 billion annual funding gap for the transition to sustainable practices. So clearly is going to be some significant cost. The discussion we'll have at the event will bring together finance and agricultural leaders to explore innovative funding models within venture capital, private investments, public-private partnerships. The key topics that we'll cover include how to align investor interests with environmental goals and de-risking financing for farmers, which is crucial, and equitably sharing the costs across the supply chain. So that's what we hope to cover, but it's a big issue for sure.
I know this is a really unique business conference. You guys are kind of giving those. You made the comment, off the record kind of responses and engagement. I feel like with that kind of topic, there could be finger pointing. Like, just the conversation stay calm. If you want to talk about that topic or even a past conference where things could get heated in those types of conversations with those topics.
They can, but we are very much insistent that we are all respectful of each other and we're there to learn from each other. There's no point in having a heated situation, because that doesn't really help anybody. It doesn't solve anything. So we're very pleased that our people that come to our events, our delegates and our participants, our panelists, our speakers, we do treat each other with the respect, to listen to each other's points of view, and then to learn about the solutions that we can work together on going forward. I mean, we have had heated discussions. We do have some what we refer to as the other room sessions, where they are very off the record, and that's where it's an unstructured conversation where we simply enable completely getting off your chest type conversations on the really difficult, tricky topics, the ones which are the perhaps controversial, perhaps ones that even under the Chatham House rule we might not feel comfortable about putting our hand up and talking about in an open in a conference room. So we have those sessions as well. But even there, it's absolutely essential. I think everyone recognises this, that you need to have these conversations in an area in an atmosphere of respect and tolerance.
Right. Come with an open mind and make sure your ears are turned on and you're listening. Before we jump into our last question, these are only a few of the many sessions that are going to be at the Future of Food and Beverage USA conference. How can a listener right now follow up if any of these certain topics really interest them? Are you going to be covering them on your podcast? Are you going to have press releases on them? How can someone stay connected to these topics?
We don't do press releases because we're keeping everything off the record. But yes, we have certainly, if you go to the Innovation Forum podcast, a lot of these issues have been covered. I mentioned the interview I did with Sajeev Mahankumar from the FAIR Initiative. That's actually, that will be out on the Innovation Forum website and podcast stream. So do check that out. But you were continually discussing these issues in our podcast, and very happy to continue that conversation. If any of your listeners do want us to cover any particular areas, get in touch with us at Innovation Forum. We're always happy to cover new topics in the podcast.
Right. Very approachable staff. Last question for you, Ian. What's next for the conference? How do we continue the momentum from the conversations that were had?
Well, I think there's a real need to focus on the imperative nature of a lot of these issues. We're not now talking about the fluffy nice to haves. Food sector businesses have spent a lot of time and resources identifying the issues on which they must engage, ultimately to ensure security of supply. Look at the aging farmer problem we've discussed already. In the US and across global supply chains, the next generation of farmers is leaving the sector. So food sector companies need to think about smart ways to engage them, to make farming attractive. An obvious thing to do is focus on farmer incomes and paying growers a fair price for their produce, rather than always seeking for and pushing for lower prices. It also means equitable spread of the cost of innovation, rather than always expecting the farmer to pay, as we've just discussed.
Right. If you found value in this conversation, we recommend you check out the Innovation Forum and their upcoming event, The Future of the Food and Beverage USA Conference on May 28th through the 29th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We will include a link in the show notes for you to learn more and register. Special thanks to Ian for joining us on Farm Food Facts. USFRA plays the critical, important role of creating opportunities for collaboration, information sharing, and solution development for the full agricultural value chain. We appreciate your time. And if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app. Tune in again. I'm Joanna Guza for Farm Food Facts. All right, Ian, I thought that went good. You gave me
Yep.
clear places to cut and clean. So were you happy with your answers?
Yeah. I thought it was fine.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Let's do that bonus question then.
Sure.
We'll start that in 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to Farm Food Facts, brought to you by the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action. I'm your host, Joanna Guza. While we have our guests on the line, we want to get their insight on the future of agriculture and what they're keeping a close eye on. Our guest was on an earlier episode talking about the future of the food and beverage space, how to drive resiliency in the next generation of farming. Our guest is Ian Welsh. He's the publishing director and podcast host for the Innovation Forum. With this bonus episode, I'd like you to answer this question. What topics are you keeping an eye on that will have a positive and or negative impact on agriculture?
Thanks, Joanna. Well, there certainly are quite a few, but let me narrow it down to one. I think right now, international regulation shifts are having significant impact. The most obvious in terms of international, perhaps, are the raft of European Union regulations on deforestation, on due diligence and reporting that many companies, and I'm sure many of your listeners will have been working towards. Many companies have welcomed the rules as they provide a more level playing field. Big players in particular have been working hard on these things for some time, and the rules were more a question of everyone else being made to catch up. However, following pressure from some member governments, there's been a move by the European Commission to dilute some of the regulations provisions and the implementation timetable, which has had a mixed reception, including understandable frustration from some companies that had put a lot of resources into ensuring compliance. This is a very fast-moving area for sure. In the US, it will be interesting to see how much of the Inflation Reduction Act's provisions and funding are rolled back by the new administration. It's not very clear. We'll perhaps know more by the time we meet in Minneapolis in May.
That was insight from Ian Welsh. He's the publishing director and podcast host for the Innovation Forum. I highly recommend you check out his episode on the future of food and beverage and how we're driving resiliency in the next generation of farming. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app. Tune in again. I'm Joanna Guza for Farm Food Facts.